Good evening and welcome tonight. We're doing User Manual for Humans Part 13. That means we've actually done 12 of these before. And because we're recording them, you can go back and find every one of them online. So there's like a little video library of knowledge. For those who have attended all of them or a lot of them, you'll see that a lot of this is sort of a repetition. But what we're doing is we're pointing out some highlights tonight. But more than that, we're bringing some more specific examples. So, eat well, move well, heal well. The first thing that we need to figure out about that is why. Why would we be interested? What is our goal? What's our desire? What are we trying to accomplish? And in one word, what we're trying to do is to get better health. We're trying to get more out of life. And now I'm going to sound a little strange, and I'm going to say, health isn't for everybody. And this sounds even stranger because on my card it's printed, health and peak performance is for everybody. But the card didn't have room to print health and peak performance is for everybody who is interested and willing to take some action. That was just too long to put on there. Okay? So some people are perfectly content to eat hamburgers and drink a six-pack of beer and go back and forth from the fridge to the sofa and have heart attacks at 50. And it's not our job to try to change that. So first of all, we need to understand that the why comes from each one of us. That if we want to be healthy, if we want to do something different than most people, then that's the desire. And then we learn to do the things that accomplish that. So who says to do these things? Well, you can read them in magazines, and we live in a world where there are a lot of shoulds. They tell you everywhere, you should exercise more, you should eat more vegetables. Yeah, but why? If you're not interested in better health, then you don't have to. So figure that out first and know why. So there's no right or wrong or should. But what we're going to talk about is that there are laws of nature. And these laws of nature are much, much stronger and more infallible than the man-made laws. See, the man-made laws, you can violate them, and it only matters if you get caught. But the laws of the universe, the laws of nature, you can't violate because you get caught every time. So that's what we want to talk about. Laws of nature, laws of biology, or of ecosystems, if you will, because you are an ecosystem. And violating the laws have consequences every time. To sort of spur on the motivation a little bit, what happens to the people who violate these principles? Well, let's look at the state of health in this country. We hear every day in the propaganda that we have the best healthcare system in the world. Okay? We spend $2 trillion on healthcare, and yet we rank somewhere around 37 or 38, which is virtually last of most developed countries. So it's not the amount of money or how sophisticated the toys are that determine how healthy we get. So if you look at slide number 2, this is from a government site, agingstats.gov. Chronic conditions reported by people 65 and over, and this is a few years ago, but it hasn't gotten better, trust me. High blood pressure, 52% of people. Arthritis, 50% of people. Heart disease, 32%. Diabetes, 27%. Cancer, 21%. Strokes, 9.2%. And then asthma, bronchitis, and emphysema. So people over 65 are really not doing very well. And why? Because they have violated the laws of nature. They're just not living in accordance with them. And that's what happens. So there's our motivation. If we don't want to be part of this statistic, then we have the choice to do something different. So that's what this is about. Please review earlier videos. I'm going to rush through this, but there's a lot of detail in if you're looking back. The first thing to understand is that the body is designed to heal. If you had a scratch on your hand or anywhere else, it heals because it's in the very fabric of nature. to heal. And it can heal anything, not just little scratches, but it can heal heart disease, it can heal cancer, it can heal anything because it's built in. And if you take a handful of pebbles and you just throw them up in the air, and they're going to fall down and they're going to scatter totally random. But when you take little pebbles called molecules and you introduce them into your body, they don't scatter randomly. They follow an intelligent pattern, and your body incorporates it so that this was a piece of salad and this was a piece of tomato and chicken, and the body knows what to do with it. It's intelligent, it's non-random, and we have to start learning to trust that there is an idea behind this system. On the other hand, disease and imbalance, what happens with disease and imbalance, there's only two things that can happen. Something interfered with this intelligent system, or this intelligent system is missing something that it needs. That's basically it. That's all we need to know, and everything else is just details. So we'll talk a few things here, a few moments about requirements for health. And I'm just setting the groundwork here to get us in the right frame of thinking. Requirements do not mean, if something's required, that does not mean that it's a hint. It does not mean that it's a suggestion. It doesn't mean try it, you might like it. Or it's a good idea if you find that you have some spare time. If it's required, it means you have to have it. But it's not required for everybody. It's only required if you want the results of health. Okay? There are no shoulds, there's only law and consequence. So what is this universal law? What if we take 1 million plants? You have 1 million plants to feed. And what are you going to feed these plants? What's the first thing you're going to give them? Anybody for water? All right. Who says sunshine? And nutrients, some good soil? Okay. You take 1 million plants and you try to keep them alive for a year and give them 2 out of 3. How many plants do you have at the end of the year? 0, pretty much. Okay? If something's required, you cannot raise something healthy with 2 out of 3. It just doesn't work. So next we want to figure out what are the requirements for humans. And that's the topic. The requirements means you have to have them is you need to eat well, move well, and feel well. Those aren't optional if you want health. You can get by for a while with 2 out of 3, but you cannot achieve optimum health and peak performance and live happily and joyfully into your 80s and 90s without these. So let's just look a little bit at what that might look like with humans. What does it actually mean 2 out of 3? Or 3 out of 3? So let's say that this is nutrition and this is movement and this is happy thought. So if one of them goes away completely, you'll die very, very quickly. But let's say that you have this much movement. Then you're stimulating the system a little bit, but you're not stimulating it enough for optimal health. And we'll subdivide this one in, and let's say that this is how much we need for optimal health. This is optimal health. So this is calories or fuel. This is actual nutrients. This is movement, and this is, let's call it, happiness. So how many people think we get enough calories? All right? So in the calorie department, I think we're doing pretty well. But when we process food, we're keeping the calories and destroying the nutrients. So how many people think we're a little bit short on nutrients? exactly. And we've had whole seminars about this. Then on movement, how many people do you think get an optimal amount of movement throughout the week?
1 in 10.
Yeah.
1 in 20.
1 in 10. And some of us, this down here is walking from the sofa to the fridge for another beer. Okay, he's getting some movement, but not a whole lot. This is the guy who walks across the parking lot and maybe doesn't always look for the closest spot. And then this is the guy who goes for a walk with the dog and does some yoga, tai chi, goes to the gym, gets some aerobics, go for a run, and so on. And there is an optimal amount. Then, of course, we can do too much, and that's where we're not giving the body time to recover. So there's always a balance. And happiness. How many people here, hands up, would say that you feel completely peaceful and joyous 100% of the time? No hands? How come? Well, we're human. We live in a society that's teaching us to worry, basically. So for most of us, I would say that we're falling far short of optimal. So yeah, we can live for a while, but if we can understand this and work on it, we can get to the optimal level of each of these. And that is what the ecosystem requires for optimal health. All right? So eat well. What does that mean? Well, it means eating things that contain nutrients that the body needs. That's the first part. The second part is that, and we've talked about these also, please review, that it's also about after you've put it in your mouth and swallowed, it doesn't automatically become tissue. There's a process in between. So the better that you chew it, the better that you enjoy it, the better that you are aware of the flavors and the textures and you pay attention, the more you're going to activate your digestive system to actually incorporate this food into your body. So it's a whole mind-body experience rather than just stuffing food into the one end. Then, if we rush away from the meal and we go straight back to work, or we go out and we start stressing again, now we're shifting the resources in the body, so we're not leaving enough blood in the digestive tract to actually digest that food. So it's more than just eating the right foods, it's also about enjoying the food and taking the time and then learning to slow ourselves down so that our body can do something with it. Then we also want to eat enough fiber and drink enough water so that we can eliminate it. Because if we put stuff in one end and it doesn't come out the other, that means that the stuff is getting old and rancid and we're starting to reabsorb a lot of toxins. And that's called autotoxicity. And that's why you want 2 or more bowel movements every day. Because if you have 1 a day, that means that the old food is sitting in the large intestine an average of 24 hours. And that's too long. That means it starts reabsorbing a lot of the stuff that's supposed to get out. And not to mention the people that have a bowel movement a week. I mean, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. So basically, every time you eat, you put something in one end, something should come out the other end, if you're having enough fiber and enough water to drive the process. And also, if there are some food supplements, if there's some nutrients that are just generally low in food, then we need to supplement those. And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. The number one thing you want to think about is fish oil, because it's just not available in natural form enough. So, some more pointers on how to eat well. First of all, and most people, when they try to do changes, they feel great resistance. They say, oh, well, that's too much. Nobody can do that. I just won't bother. So we need to start understanding and implementing changes gradually. because otherwise it's a shock to our habits. It's just too much to cope with and too much to deal with. So start wherever you are and just set a goal to increase. So for example, eat whole foods. Those are the foods that contain nutrients, the ones that they haven't put into package with long labels. If you start with 50% of whole foods and then work your way up, then you can do it at your own pace. Eat raw foods, and raw foods are primarily vegetables, but of course you can eat fruits and eggs and meat and fish and things like that as well. Start with, well, you may not want to eat raw fish. I'll take that back. So primarily vegetables and fruit would be the raw stuff. So start maybe with 20% and then work your way up. The fish and the meat, that's the whole food. Start eating organic. So organic costs more, it's harder to find, so start slow. Make a goal of maybe eating 20%. Learn which foods are the most important, which ones are the most contaminated by toxins, such as grapes and strawberries. You hardly ever want to eat those unless they're organic, because they use tons of pesticides, and you eat the peel that they spray. Something else like a banana, which you're going to peel, is not as crucial. So pick a few and start working your way up. Reduce bread and starch, and especially wheats. So if you're not ready to cut it out completely out of your life, then just make a goal of cutting it in half. Try to eat half as much as you do now. And sugars and starches and breads and starches, sugars, they are the number one reason why 27% of the elderly people have diabetes, and why 50% of them are insulin resistant. And we had a whole seminar on that. We are just not designed to eat large quantities of starches. That in genetically speaking, if our DNA is this old, then bread was introduced over here. It is still a very, very novel thing to our DNA and to our bodies. Next, sugar and alcohol. Neither sugar nor alcohol is a poison. They only become that when we have too much. The bodies are designed to process them naturally. We have enzymes, we have systems to break them down. We have alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an enzyme to break it down, which means it's a natural thing. It only becomes a problem when you exaggerate. And the same thing with sugar. So my suggestion, and this is just opinion, you can research and come up with your own numbers, I would suggest keep it below 20 grams per day. And that's for sugar and or alcohol. Don't exceed 20. I would also say avoid pasteurized dairy. Dairy is a good food when it's passed from mother to child, the straight source. But when we extract it and nuke it and do all sorts of things with it, it becomes a very unsuitable food. It's very, very difficult to break down. When they take milk and they make yogurt out of it, they return those enzymes and bacteria to the milk that they took away. So yogurt is actually digestible. But stick with plain and not the fruity kind, because those have more sugar than Coca-Cola. And take a high quality fish oil supplement. So these are just simple, plain suggestions to get you going. This is not a simple process, it's a life-changing process, so you got to figure it out for yourself, but use these as guidelines. So what do we want to prioritize when we're looking at eating well? For health purposes, the number one thing that we're looking for when we're choosing our food and designing a plan is stabilized blood sugar. If we don't want to do anything else, just work to stabilize blood sugar. And look at the diabetes video to learn how to do that and why. Secondly, I would say avoid toxins. So And toxins are not just the non-organic foods, they're also anything processed where they use preservatives or artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, artificial aromatics, artificial anything. These things are poison, and the more that you eat of them, the harder it is for your body to function. And thirdly, I would say start buying organic, buy free range, and buy locally grown. And as a fourth point, I would also say maybe start looking at pH. But if you're following the other rules, then that sort of follows by itself. So people always ask me, what do I eat? What do we do? How do you do this thing? And there's not a set way for everybody, but one example that I have developed that works really well for me is on slide number 8. I start my day with a smoothie, virtually most every day. And with the smoothie, I put 2 cups of water, 1 teaspoon of psyllium husks, 2 tablespoons of protein powder, and you want to make that something that's not soy and not flavored, because those are typically full of all sorts of junk. 2 celery stalks, 1 cup of spinach, and I use frozen. I use half a banana and 1 cup of berries and fruit. And I use the frozen fruit. I buy big bags, stick them in the freezer, and just put it in every morning. That way you have the convenience of things not spoiling. And then I finish up with a little dash of stevia, which is a natural sweetener. So what this does, and I forgot one thing, which is one of the most important, is a half a cup of almonds. Go ahead and write that in if you want to do this. Half a cup of almonds provides most of the protein and the fat. And when you do a smoothie, you want to provide plenty of nutrients. You want to provide plenty of raw foods. But remember what number 1 priority was? Stabilize blood sugar. So if you make a smoothie from fruit alone, that will jack up your blood sugar severely. If you mix in some vegetables, that will make it better. If you mix in some protein powder, that will make it even better. And if you mix in some almonds, which has both protein and fat, now you're going to get a smoothie that will give you almost perfect blood sugar levels. Okay? Because the protein and the fat slows down the sugar from the fruit. Plus, when you use the whole fruit, it is much better than drinking a juice. Because juice is basically just a tiny little better than soft drinks. So when they say, oh, it's made from fruit juice and all that, don't buy into it, because it's still just sugar. I start my day that way, and I get a bunch of good quality fats, good quality proteins. I get fruits and vegetables. So I've already had more fruits and vegetables than most people get in a day. Then I have a salad for lunch or dinner, and then I have one more sort of regular meal somewhere in there, meat and potato, whatever you enjoy. But with this idea, now you have pretty much accomplished everything that I explained previously to set out to do. You eat more than half of your food raw, you're getting plenty of fruits and vegetables, you're stabilizing your blood sugar, you're doing all those things. So just an example. Move well. What is move well? What does that mean? Why? What's it all about? Again, look back at the videos. The movement stimulates the brain. Every cell in your body needs food and stimulation to live. And the brain lives on movement, much, much more than it lives on thinking or seeing or hearing or anything else. The main nutrient, the main stimulation for the brain is movement. And that movement comes from movements of joints and muscles. So when a joint moves through its full range of motion, whether it's a shoulder joint or whether it's a neck joint or whether it's a low back joint, that joint sends a signal to the brain, and that is the whole purpose of movement, or the major purpose of movement. And without it, we just can't function properly. When we move, we also utilize muscles, and muscles stabilize joints. So they sort of supplement each other, and they together they provide full function. And as you all know, muscles don't operate by themselves, they only take orders from the brain. So to move well means that your brain and your muscles and your joints are in control and they have full balance and full range of motion. So that means that the brain knows where the head is supposed to be in relation to all the other body parts. And most people you see, they're walking around like this. And with this, you are not going to have proper movement. It's not possible. If you imagine a bowling ball, and you're holding a bowling ball that weighs about 8 to 10 pounds, that's how much the head weighs. So if you're balancing that bowling ball, then there is a certain movement, and you can balance that and it sort of works. But if you move it forward 2 inches, you've just increased the muscle load about 10 times, and you have reduced the motion. There is no proper motion and fluidity in that position anymore. So that's why posture matters. That's why this stuff is important. And that's why I keep on everybody about doing their bird exercises and their wobble chair, which we now have videos on. So move well is simply use it or lose it. You cannot obtain optimal health without regular movement. And it doesn't have to mean exercise, go experience pain in the gym. It simply means do something on a regular basis, whether it's just standing up, doing some stretches, or whether it's doing a Tai Chi class or yoga or whatever you enjoy. Those are fine, but the basics is just to keep moving. How do you move well? Well, if you have had your neck out here and your neck isn't moving and it's been there that way for 20 years, then you need chiropractic adjustments. So chiropractic, what it actually does, it restores range of motion so that the body can talk to the brain through that motion. That is what chiropractic does. It also sends a powerful message during the adjustment so that the brain wakes up. We interrupt neurological patterns, basically. Next, if you want to, you can do some yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, Qigong, weights, aerobics, whatever you like, whatever you feel good doing. And I would suggest 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. The more variety you put into it, the better off you are. Then learn to do some simple things like we teach here, the wobble chair, the spinal hygiene, the bird exercises. Learn to do those. They take about a minute or 2, and you can fit them in throughout the day. And that provides that ongoing motion that feels great because you stimulate the brain. And all of us, most of us, have jobs where we're going to be sitting for a large portion of time. Many people sit for 6 or 8 hours straight. And when that happens, what we want to do is we want to get up and do something every 30 minutes. Set an alarm clock, or have a little box on your desk so you can sit down for a little bit and then you can stand up and do something and sit down. But change it around. Do whatever you have to so you're not sitting like this for 8 hours. And what are the priorities of moving well? Well, number 1, always stimulate the brain. That is what movement does. And because the brain regulates everything else in the body, that's why exercise works for everything. They tell people, you have this problem, you have that problem, you have pain, you're depressed, go exercise, and it works. And that's the reason. So the second reason to exercise or move would be get fit. If you enjoy doing races, if you enjoy hiking or climbing walls or whatever, you need a certain level of fitness, and the movement will support that. Use it or lose it. Thirdly, it improves circulation. It basically increases circulation, and you're fixing your plumbing. You're shooting more blood through the plumbing, and it cleans stuff up. It exchanges nutrients faster, and it activates tissues. So yes, there's some benefit there. But that benefit is far, far, far down the list compared to the brain benefits. And yet, the circulation and the heart, that's basically all we hear. But the reason, again, they work better is because the brain gets stimulated and works better. So this brings us to think well. And we'll introduce one of my favorite cartoons. And there's this psychiatrist or psychologist talking to his patient says, "Every time I see you, all you do is talk about your problems. No wonder you're depressed." And what I like about it is that it's funny, we sort of joke about it, but that's really what it's about. That really is what it's about. Depression is when you predominantly think depressing thoughts. Use it or lose it, whichever pathways. If you use a muscle, you keep it. If you don't, you lose it. It's the same way with pathways and neurological patterns. The ones that you use get reinforced, the ones that you don't wither away. So if you practice your depressing thoughts a lot, guess what? You're going to be depressed. If you practice your happy thoughts a lot, you'll be happy. The problem is that we believe that it's the world around us that dictate our thoughts, that dictate our reactions. And that's not the case. We've just learned to interpret it that way. So, what does it mean to think well? It means we need to learn how to feel good. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen when things in our lives fall in place, because they never will. Did you know that? You will never get done. That's one of the secrets of life. You're not going to one day get to the end of your life and everything will be done so you can go ahead and die. There's going to be some stuff left over when you move on. So learn how to feel good. And learn to think about what you want rather than the absence of it. That means focus on the solution rather than the problem. And you can ask people all the time, well, what do you want? And they say, well, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. Yes, but what do you want? Well, I'd like this, but I don't want this and I don't want this. A lot of us are so stuck in that mode of thinking, and it's the conversations that we have with everybody is about what's wrong. So it's a process of learning these things, and it's a choice. Just for fun, you want to stand up? We'll do a quick little demo here.
Me?
Yes. Just to illustrate that point. So if you stand right there and face me, I use something called muscle testing, because muscle testing can ask the brain questions. So if you hold your arm out for me, and you hold it there real nice and strong, and I'm going to push down and you resist as strong as you can. Hold strong. Okay? And that's nice and strong. So most people would say that's a strong muscle. What I would say, that is a strong muscle test where the brain is able to send a signal strong enough to maintain that muscle. So now move your left leg forward like you're taking a step. Okay? And hold this arm for me again. And hold real nice and strong. And now it's not working anymore. So what changed? Did you all of a sudden lose half the muscle?
No.
No, it's still there. So what changed is the signal from the brain to the muscle. Your body found a reason to decrease the signal. Okay? And in this case, it's supposed to happen. You can relax for a second. It's supposed to happen because when we walk, the brain knows that this doesn't work very well, that this works much better. So your brain will send a signal to turn that muscle off in order for you to walk properly. So it's not an accident. I picked that on purpose. Okay? But what it means is we can use a muscle test to find out when the brain is turning things on and turning things off. Okay? So let's have a little bit of fun with this. And stand and face me.
Oh.
Just feet side by side. So hold real nice and strong. And don't let me push down. Okay. Now think about something that you like. Okay, and hold strong. And that's nice. Well, actually, let me do that again. And hold strong. Okay, you might want to be careful with that. You thought about something you like eating, or?
I can't tell you.
You can't tell me. Okay. All right. All right.
It's
So we'll
personal.
all right. All right. So think about. We'll just use a couple of words. Okay. We'll just use the word appreciation and hold real strong. Okay. And that makes you strong. Then we'll say frustration and hatred. And it doesn't work the same because they represent different things in your mind, and therefore your brain has different kinds of output. Now going back to this, the problem versus the solution. Now think of a problem that you're having, and don't let me push down. Okay? And that's not working at all. Think of the solution to the problem and hold. Rock solid. So that's what our brain does all the time. When we focus on the problem, we're shutting down resources. Not just to solve the problem, we're shutting down resources for our body, for our health. When we think about the solution, all of a sudden we're enabling resources. And we're getting stuff done, and we're getting healthy in the process. So that's how much all of this matters. Thank you very much. And we won't ask what that thing was. We just have to figure that out. We'll teach you some releasing. Where were we? Yes, solution rather than problem. Other very well working things are practice appreciation. There are books written on that. Stop worrying. Okay? Do you know what worry is? It's anticipating something you don't want. That's what it is. So here's how it works. There are two kinds of things. There are things that you can do something about. But if you can do something about them, then you don't have to worry about them. You just do it. Don't worry. The other kind of thing are things that you can't do anything about. But if you can't do anything about them, you don't have to worry about them. Right? So that encompasses all possible things you can do something about or things you can't do something about. And neither one of them makes any sense to worry about. And yet, how much time do we typically spend? Okay? So practicing thinking, practicing feeling good encompasses learning to think and reason and sort of deselect things that we don't want. Mind over matter. That is a little cliche, but I love it because what it really means is if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Okay? And that means that you accept what things are. You stop offering resistance. And resistance is a mental thing. We look around and we see things that aren't the way that we want them, and then we have two choices. We can try to change the thing, or we can change how we feel about it. And most people do the third thing, they resist it. They worry and they fret and they feel bad about it. They don't change it and they don't accept it. And it makes no sense. So mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So just let things be as they are. And the ones that you can change and want to change, you do. Leave the rest to themselves. And then understand that you can change your beliefs. You can choose your beliefs. That we think that, oh, well, this is my belief system. This is how it is. A belief is nothing more than a thought you have practiced over and over. That's what beliefs are. And you can change them. So choose some that work for you and get to it. So this is a very brief overview. I don't expect you to sort of grasp all of this all at once. but I'll give you some resources, and again, you can look back at some videos. So some suggestions to practice to learn thinking well. This starts with breathing exercises. I cannot emphasize that enough, and there's a whole seminar on that. Just breathe slowly, 5 to 10 minutes, twice a day, plus every chance you get. When the computer freezes, when you're sitting at a traffic light, when you click the print icon and it takes 30 seconds, you have time for 2 breaths. Okay? It's perfect. Then you learn also gradually to add a positive emotion and to clear your mind. And now before you know it, you've changed your breathing into meditation. And meditation is not about chanting and yellow robes. Meditation is about feeling good and learning to clear your mind, giving your body some peace so that it can get on with what it's supposed to do. I would recommend do whatever you can and work up to when you can do it 10 to 15 minutes once or twice a day. I don't think there's anything else that you can do that has more benefit for your health and your joy and your well-being and your success than to do that. And here's a controversial one that I would say, that I would recommend: stop watching news. There's nothing in there you have to know. There really isn't. If there's some crucial stuff that your career depends on, or some things you have to know, there are sources where you can find that out once a week in 5 minutes. But the watching of the news every day just reinforces the world trying to tell you how bad things are. So just don't do it. You'll be amazed. Give it 2 years and practice this stuff. Stop watching news. Create your own thought and vibration. You'll be amazed. Stop listening to gossip. When people start complaining about what things are, then change the subject, walk away, do something. Just don't notice when people are doing it and don't buy into it. And if you lose some friends over it, you'll get new and better ones. Then I would say read books and or listen to some sort of uplifting programs or courses or videos or tapes or CDs. Just start putting in something positive. Rather than the television and the mainstream default input, just start putting in something else. And before you know it, you'll have some different beliefs. Spend less time at looking at what is and more time looking at what if. And this goes all hand in hand with the other things we talked about. So what can we hope to accomplish with that? What's the priority? Well, first, it will get you healthy. It will provide the positive vibration that your ecosystem requires. Your system, your health, cannot thrive without it. It's required. So do enough to feel good. Then you'll find that you get more out of life. You learn to enjoy the present moment. You learn to enjoy where you are. You find more things to enjoy wherever you go. You'll get more energy, more happiness, more joy. And in doing this, don't try to change anybody else. Don't worry about anybody else. Just create so much momentum for yourself that you lead by example and that they can't help but want to follow and get curious about what's going on with you. Number 14, cartoon time. So most people now say, well, you know, this is also good, but I'm so busy. Does that thought occur to anybody? I got a life to live. Well, what fits your busy schedule better? Exercising an hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day? So one of my favorite metaphors is don't be like the lumberjack. And the lumberjack was this guy. There was a whole team of lumberjack, but one of them, he was always far behind. And the management came and checked up on him. And is he lazy? Is he not doing his job? And well, it turned out he was working harder than anybody else. He came there first in the morning and he left last at night. And he could never get as much done. So they went and checked up on him. and they found out that everyone else had really, really sharp axes, and his was just terribly, terribly dull. So they asked him, well, why don't you sharpen your axe? And he said, are you crazy? I'm so far behind. When would I have time for that? Okay? So all of what I've talked about here is about sharpening your axe. It doesn't take time. It looks like it takes time, but it gives you life. It gives you all the things that you really want. Last, I've just listed some resources, and you can check with me depending on how interested and open-minded you are, what you may be looking for. There's a couple of links, and if you just type those straight in, that's a webcast that Oprah did that is absolutely phenomenal. There's 10 videos, each of between an hour and a half and 2 hours, where she sits down and talks with one of my favorite teachers, Eckhart Tolle. There's no charge, you just go in there and look at it, and they're talking about a lot of these things, about why do we worry, why do we do the things that we do. And Oprah is a wonderfully conscious and forward-looking person, so that's a great resource. The second one is you can sign up for a daily newsletter, and it's just a little blurb to give you some upliftment by another one of my favorites called Abraham Hicks. And you can talk to me about that one also. If you're open-minded, no problem, but some people are, they have some issues. It's some of the most wonderful truths and uplifting, simple ways of looking at things that I have ever come across. I've listened to hundreds of hours, and it just comes back to me super fresh and exciting. Then there's some books, and there's some authors. So I won't go over those, but just talk to me if you're interested. Don't be like the lumberjack. Take some time, spend 15, 20, 30 minutes a day reading through some things that will give you new ways of looking at things, that will give you energy. And that may be the best thing that you do. So I would like to thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you got something out of it. Please feel free to ask any questions. We'll do this again next week. I don't know what the topic is yet, but we always keep moving forward. And feel free to bring someone that you care about that needs to know this stuff, but don't force them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.